Starting a podcast used to take forever until AI tools changed everything. And with 500 million people listening to podcasts right now, a number that is also expected to grow by 150 million in the next 2 years, there's no better time for you to start a podcast. And by the end of this video, you will have learned how to do podcast ideation, equipment recording, AI editing and publishing, all that you can launch your podcast today. Now, the first step is defining your podcast. And that all starts by sitting down in a comfy chair like this, figuring out what you want your podcast to be about. Or as they say in Paris, your niche. And now, what I'm about to tell you might shock you. Despite what a lot of podcast gurus might tell you, your podcast doesn't have to be the thing that you're most knowledgeable about. As most of the time, podcast listeners are not looking for the #1 subject matter expert. They're looking for 2 things: raw passion for the subject and fun. And while yes, it does help to have some knowledge about what it is you're talking about, really exploring something with your audience is the key to having a successful podcast. So in that case, you need to ask yourself, what unique perspective can I bring to this topic? Or in other words, what do I really think? And while exploring your thoughts, try to come up with at least 10 episode ideas about your topic. And if you're struggling to get 10, then pick a new topic. And now, once you have found your subject, it is time to think about your podcast's name. And unlike the previous wishy-washy point, you're gonna have to check off some very distinctive boxes here. Your podcast title should contain keywords related to your topic so that people can find your podcast easily. And Google Trends is a great way to find what keywords people are already searching. So keep it specific, concise, and memorable. And never use an overly vague artsy title if you're wanting to attract a wider audience. And after that, you need cover art. Now, don't worry, you don't have to hand over your soul and a lifetime income to Adobe for Photoshop. You can actually just use Canva for free to put something together. Now, I'm gonna leave the design up to you, but make sure that it's bold and that it has contrasting colors and it is 3000 by 3000 pixels. Okay, so now we've got a niche, a name, and a swanky logo, but it is time for some bad news. You need to be on camera. Yes, audio-only podcasting is a thing if you're starting podcasting as a hobby. I would say absolutely go for it if that's the case. But if you, and I'm looking at you, you're gonna wanna grow your podcast fast, right? Then that means you gotta be on camera. Not only does this help you connect with your audience much better, but it also allows you to cut up short clips in your full podcast episodes and then publish them on social media sites like Instagram Reels and YouTube Shorts. And I know you've already seen this style of content while scrolling endlessly at night when you're trying to go to sleep, but trust me, it is incredibly effective for growing your podcast. And you can also learn more about the sharp decline of audio-only podcasts in this video right here. Also, please hit like and subscribe while you're messing with things here because I have a quota to meet and I don't know what's going to happen if I don't reach it. Seriously, I might disappear. You guys still there? All right, now that we've gotten all that out of the way, you need to figure out the seating plan, or more specifically, how many seats you're gonna need for your podcast studio. Now here, it's not so cut and dry because once again, it's about your energy. So if you're more on the introverted side of things, then you might wanna opt for a solo podcast. But if you're more extroverted, like yours truly, then having a guest or a co-host can be a great way to grow quickly. Now there is a third option, and that is the interview format, where you would sit down one-on-one with the guests of different viewpoints and either interview them or have a debate. Shows like JRE and Lex Fridman podcasts have made this style of content more popular than ever. But now you will need to have some really good guests lined up if you're choosing this option. Knowledgeable ones if you can help it, because unless of course you want to sit down and have a debate with your crazy grandpa about climate change for 3 hours, be my guest, but I don't know how many people are going to listen to that. But now if you're struggling here, then check out this video on how to prep to interview your guests. And that takes us to our next key point, episode length. Now, the majority of podcasts are between 20 and 40 minutes long. We recommend publishing a new podcast episode once a week so that you can develop and foster a connection between you and your listeners. So figure out how much time you could set aside a week to record your episode. And now that we've figured out the format, it's time to create our podcast setup. And this is going to be a lot cheaper than what you might be thinking. First is going to be your recording space. And you really only need to tick off 2 boxes here: quiet and comfortable. And with how good AI editing is getting lately, more on that later, you only need to have that second one in mind: comfort. Second, there's the microphone. Podcast mics have 2 types of connections, XLR or USB, but I'll save you the hassle in trying to figure out the differences and just let you know that USB is probably going to be your best bet. They're affordable, practical, and they still sound great. You can also check out a bunch of different options for the best budget microphone in this video right here, but for now, we recommend using the Samsung Q2U. You can actually buy this brand new on Amazon for around $70. Then you'll have to pick your camera. Now, this is the part where budding podcasters like yourself panic and go into a frenzy because they imagine some super expensive DSLR rig, but in reality, we recommend just using your phone. Most semi-modern phones can actually capture full 1080p and look super professional. But now if you're still rocking that Nokia brick, then I would say just use your PC or Mac webcam to pair with some fancy AI tools to help upscale that footage. But more on that later. Next is your recording, editing, and hosting software. Now, normally you would need to use 3 different pieces of software to do all that I just mentioned. But with Podcastle, it's all in one, baby. All on the free plan, you can actually record over the internet with remote guests or co-hosts, and all you need is a mic and a PC. All right, looks like we have all of the pieces in place, and it's time to record your first episode. But for starters, don't skimp out on your intro, because when it's done well, it hooks the listeners and it convinces them to stick around for the rest of the episode. Let them know what you're going to be talking about, what concern you might be addressing, and why they should be sticking around for the end. But now, before you reach around the camera and click record, it might help to have a written out podcast outline. This is just the bullet points to help cover all the topics that you're wanting to discuss, especially if it's your first episode. But now, if you're solo, you might even want to consider a teleprompter too, so that you don't get too sidetracked here. We recommend using Podcastle's teleprompter if you're using the app. And they even have an AI tool that fixes eye contact in case you look like you're reading on camera. We also recommend more teleprompter options in this video. Just remember, depending on the software or hardware you're using, you might want to place the teleprompter a little bit off to the right side of the camera so that it looks natural. But now that you're set up, click record and start talking that magic. And after you've done your recording for your first episode, it's time to edit. Now, you can use any software or platform that you like, but for this one, I'm going to be sticking with Podcastle because I enjoy its simplicity. That's not all. I can actually cut up different parts of my podcast to remove any awkward pauses by using the snip tool, or I can actually just click the filler word removal tool and automatically remove any ums and ahs that I don't want in there. And if there's any annoying hum in the background, like a dishwasher or a dryer, I can actually click the background noise remover and be cured of that white noise. Now, this isn't a tutorial video, as we already have one of those right there. So for now, I'll just use some visual AI effects for the Podcastle Pro package, and hey, look at that, we're done. And if you like what you see here and you want to experience the Podcastle magic for yourself, then check out the promo code linked down in the description for 50% off your first month. But now it's time to move on to publishing. Once your episode is ready, then you'll need to add some important details like title, description, and any tags that would help listeners find your content. In order to publish your podcast, you should first consider finding a hosting app to distribute your podcast to all of its platforms. Once again, I'll be using Podcastle for this. When everything is finalized, you just hit publish to make your episode live. And Podcastle will automatically generate an RSS feed for your podcast, which is key for its distribution. This feed can be submitted to major directories like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts by signing up for their services and linking your RSS feed. And the best part is that you can control all of them through Podcastle. So once they're linked, you can actually send out a new episode automatically. But now we're not done yet, because we still need to publish on YouTube, which is quickly becoming the holy grail of podcasts. So export your file in 4K and publish it on the tube. And then go to the playlist and set it as a podcast. That way, it'll even appear on the YouTube Music app. Finally, you need to promote your podcast. As you already know, short-form content is incredibly popular right now, and podcast clips are leading the way. By cutting out the most interesting or intriguing moments of your video podcasts, you can create engaging content to share on platforms like TikTok and Instagram Reels. And with Podcastle, this process is about to get even easier with an AI-powered feature that is going to automatically generate these clips coming soon, which is going to save you a ton of time and effort. You can also expand your reach by using podcast advertising platforms like Odd Circles and Overcast Ads. These tools help you connect with new audiences and grow your listener base. And don't forget to include a call to action in every episode, which basically means telling the listener to either share, like, or subscribe. For example, why don't you like and subscribe, like for this video, the one that you're watching right now, because you don't want to miss out on my journey through the strange world of AI podcasting in the next video. But now you're ready to start your podcast today. And don't forget the limited time Podcastle promo code in the description below. Thank you again, and I'll see you in the next one.